Hello and welcome to Guaranty RV Supercenter's live stream. We call it G Live. We air every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. My name is Marshall White. I am your host today, and I'm also joined by Quinn Larson, our co-host. Good morning, Quinn.
Good morning, Marshall. Good to be here. Good morning, Internet.
I call Quinn Dr. Q because he is the RV doctor and he is our answer to any and all RV questions. Please, if you're not shy, ask a question online. We'll do our best to answer it at any point during the live stream, and we will put the recording onto Facebook afterwards and YouTube so that if you do have a question after this session, we can get it answered as well. Our topic today is Inverter 101. We're really excited to share this topic with you because we get questions all the time about what is the difference between an inverter and a converter? What types of appliances do they run, and why should I even care about an inverter? Maybe the best thing we could do out of the gate before we get into demonstrating the inverter today is just ask Dr. Q, what is the difference between a converter and an inverter, and how do we remember that difference?
Well, the easy difference between them is a converter takes 110 volts and converts it into 12 volt. An inverter takes 12 volt and inverts it into 110. I've got a little, I guess maybe a mnemonic way to remember it. I'm not sure that's actually the right English phrase, but so a converter goes from 110 steps down to 12 volt. That's kind of a negative direction as far as the numbers go. So that's kind of a con in that, pros and cons. So a converter steps down, an inverter steps up.
I will actually use that from now on. I was just before we aired today, I was asking, gosh, Dr. Q, is there any way that you can help me remember this? And, given he's been doing this for decades, that's his method. I like it. That makes sense to me. Stepping down in voltage is a con. And, what also strikes me about these inverters is they've got a pretty tough job to do if they're trying to up level, so to speak, 12 volts all the way to 110 volts. That's asking an awful lot of the batteries, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got to imagine that you're asking this little box of 12 volt to create 110, or at least produce 110. There's only so much 12 volt in this box. So it's pretty easy to wipe out your amperage with even a small inverter. So there are two basic types of inverters. You've got a modified sine and a pure sine. Modified sine is good for non-sensitive electronics. Tools, that sort of thing, charging batteries, that sort of thing. The big bad boy over here, that Magnum, that's a pure sine. That's going to run anything that's sensitive, your computers, your flat screen televisions, possibly a microwave, depending on the size of it. So there are two basic ways that an inverter is used. It's either used for a short period of time.
There's a big difference in price, I presume. What are we talking about between the little tool inverters that maybe come standard in some pickup trucks and that you can purchase, aftermarket for your RV versus, a pre-wired, heavy-duty, Magnum pure sine wave inverter? Are we talking hundreds of dollars in difference or what?
Quite easily, actually. This is probably a $50 inverter here. Depending on all of the features in that thing, you could spend $2,000 for an inverter of that size. Plus, you've got installation there. So that's one of the things that I wanted to touch on today is we're not really talking about installation here. We're talking about how it works. If you're replacing an inverter, you probably do that by yourself, take things off one at a time, put them on one at a time. But if you're having a new one installed, unless it's one of these little guys that you just hook right to the battery and it's got an outlet on the front of it, if it's any kind of involved installation, I strongly suggest getting somebody that knows what they're doing to at least participate, or taking it to us and letting our experts do it for you.
We are located in Junction City, Oregon, and we have what's called the Guaranty RV Travel Center here. And that's part of what makes Guaranty RV Supercenters a destination, is because of that travel center. We carry all these products, all these different inverters, but more importantly, we carry the expertise to advise you on maybe what's right for your application. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in that sort of thing, swing into our store in Junction City, or just search Guaranty RV Travel Center online and get in touch with us. Their phone numbers are on there, and the products we sell are in our online parts store at guaranty.com/parts. I know this sounds like a big advertising spiel, but those are resources that are available to you. as well as our blogs at Guaranty.com. We have one in particular that Dr. Q wrote called "What Size Inverter Will Work for My CPAP?" And obviously, there's a ton of questions about how to run the CPAP in the RV, and those resources are also available at Guaranty.com. You might have to scroll through the blogs back to this spring.
Yeah, I think it's the second page. But.
Yeah, it's on page 2, so check that out. And if you're so inclined, you can just replace the word CPAP with your other appliance you're trying to run, and that will help you determine, that blog will help you determine and do the math in terms of how many watts and whether you need a pure or modified sine wave. So we are encouraging any and all questions during this blog or during this live stream. So please let us know what questions you have about inverters. We'll get them answered.
Okay, so traditionally you're going to use an inverter for either a short little burst, like say you're microwaving some popcorn, or you're going to use it for a long-term run, say you're watching a movie. Okay, so what you would want to do is you would want to figure out your draw, which is all on the blog that Marshall was talking about. All that math is there for you math people out there. It'll show you the formula. It'll let you figure that all out for yourself. Basically, if you're going to use them for a long period of time, you're going to need more storage capacity. So I'm showing 6-volt batteries here because when you run 6 volts together, you actually make one big 12-volt. 2 6-volts are worth about 3 12-volt batteries as far as their amp hour. Wow. So in an inverter of this size, even 2 of these is probably going to be is going to limit you. I would suggest 4, maybe 6 of these batteries if you want to use that inverter for a long period of time. The inverter is really designed so that if you can't plug into 110, you can boondock for a short period of time. It isn't really designed to run high draw appliance like the microwave or the air conditioner for any period of time because, again, you only have so much 12 volt in this little box. It can only hold so much, and you're drawing from it, creating 110. It empties pretty quickly.
You can presumably run a vent fan, your fantastic fan, but trying to run an AC off of most any inverter for any length of time, what happens?
Basically, you exhaust the amperage in a battery, and it doesn't invert anymore. You get below a certain amperage level, and it just shuts itself down. Your fans and things are going to be 12 volt, but even like your household refrigerator, so a household refrigerator is more and more common in an RV. Your household refrigerator is going to run off of an inverter, unless you're plugged into 110, obviously. But the household refrigerator running on an inverter is actually more efficient than the RV refrigerator running on its 110 element. So that's where we get into kind of the math and what the draw is and how to size an inverter. And again, that is all complicated stuff. Some of it's explained on the blog, but today we're just talking about Inverter 101, which is you're taking 12 volt and creating 110. So maybe it's time to see how that works in live action. I think I'm going to unplug the coach here and then we'll head inside.
Sounds great. Okay. So inside the coach at the moment, we're able to run the TV and all, every appliance because we're plugged into shore power. Now that we unplug it, we are reliant on the inverter to run many appliances. What appliances may those be?
We're going to do the television and the DVD player for us here. This particular unit, it may be a breaker, but does not seem to have the microwave hooked to the inverter. So I'm going to let camera go ahead of me here. So here at the floor line with the rest of our switches is our inverter remote panel. Pretty simple. We're going to turn this rascal on by pushing the green button. It's going to take it a moment. It's telling us we have 12.7 amps dropped down. That's pretty common. That 12.7 was probably how, when we had it plugged in, it just put a little service charge in there. So at this point, just like we were running off the generator or plugged in, I'm going to turn on my DVD player. I'm going to turn on my television here. So as you can see, it's powering up. We're not plugged into anything. And I think, personally, I think that this is really what most people use their inverter for. Almost everything else will run off of the 12-volt system or the propane. When you're running on an inverter, see, we've got our fancy little Guaranty graphic there. That is the DVD player running, folks. So when you pull in for the night and maybe you can't plug in or it's late, you got a couple of kids, you want to pacify them for a moment, you just turn on the inverter, you put something on, you get yourself situated, and you go to bed. They're not really, in my estimation, designed for long-term use in most coaches. You're seeing some of that change in that there are a lot of coaches now that are coming out with like a lithium battery. I think it's the Road Trek that's coming with a lithium battery, and they're all electronic. Those lithium batteries eventually are going to be prevalent throughout the RV industry because they're really small and they hold an incredible amount of juice. So really right now we're still limited by the amount of capacity that a traditional wet cell or even glass mat battery can hold.
That's pretty cool. Just let us know on these inverters. It seems like there's so many different brands and so many different choices, and depending on the manufacturer, they're using different inverters. What's your impression of maybe the top quality inverters, or whether that really matters? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like we do a lot with the Magnums. There's a company called Samplex that used to be Xantrex. Eventually you come to find like tires. There are probably only 4 or 5 people that make tires. How many names are there on tires? It's like refrigerators. How many people, the Manna, Kenmore, Maytag, they're all basically made by the same people. They put a different sticker on it. So I think anymore the technology is pretty even across the board. But there are some that are designed for like the shock and the rigors of an RV environment. Like that big Magnum is a pretty good one. But you want to look at the inverter and make sure that its features and function meet your needs. After that, brand is not as critical. Obviously, if you're looking at a $100 2,000-watt inverter, you may want to rethink spending that $100 on something you're going to replace right away. But it's going to be pretty obvious if it is a cheap second-run version. Most of them are about the same price.
Do we have the recommended inverters from Guaranty for sale on the parts store?
There are a few there now. There's a link from the blog that'll get you to some others. You can go to our online catalog. There's a link to a manufacturer's catalog there that has them in there. We source some of ours locally. There's a company out of Monroe that does a really good job for us that stocks them for us, basically. Monroe is just around the corner from Junction City for those of you watching from some other part of the country. But it makes it really convenient for us. They have a lot of offerings. But if we don't have what you need in stock, we would be able to have it that afternoon or probably then the next day.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to wrap it up and conclude our show. I think for me, the most valuable thing that I learned is the difference between the inverter and the converter. And again, just the simple way to remember that is, since we're going from 12 volt to 120 volt with an inverter, that's a big positive step. That's a lot of, we're trying to move all the way from 12 volts to 110, 20 volts. That's a big positive step. The reverse of that with the converter, stepping down from 110 or 120 down to 12 volt is a negative, con. And so I like that I can that way when I do have an issue with my inverter, I can call in and get the right help and not be discussing my converter when I really meant to be discussing my inverter. So from all of us at Guaranty RV, we are very pleased to bring you this information, and we will be back again next Friday at 9 a.m. I appreciate your listening, and if we can answer any questions, let us know. Thank you, everyone.